We have built spaceships that have transported men safely to the moon and back. And still, with all of this marvelous technology, we do not know how the Great Pyramid was built, who built it, and most importantly, why it was built. Egyptologists theorize that primitive people working with copper and brass tools constructed this monument. However, one has only to visit this structure to realize it must surely have been built by an advanced race of people. Its perfection is like nothing found in the world today. Gordon Michael Scallion, Time Travel to the Pyramids of Egypt. On a November night in 1983, while participating in an expedition through the Saudi Arabian desert, Belgian civil engineer and amateur Egyptologist Robert Bauval awoke from a restless sleep. He had been grappling with one of Egypt's most inexplicable enigmas. The third of the three pyramids at Giza is significantly smaller than the other two, although Pharaoh Menkaure, for whom it was built, was of equal stature to his predecessors. Indeed, Menkaure was a benevolent and well-liked ruler. He disapproved of the conduct of his father, reopened the temples, and allowed the people, who were ground down to the lowest point of misery, to return to their occupations and resume the practice of sacrifice. His justice in the decision of causes was beyond that of all the former kings. The Egyptians praise him in this respect more highly than any of their other monarchs, declaring that he not only gave his judgments with fairness, but also, when anyone was dissatisfied with his sentence, made compensation to him out of his own purse. Herodotus, The Histories, Book 2. In addition to his pyramid being smaller than the other two, there is another equally strange fact. This pyramid is misaligned relative to the other two, although all three are aligned with the four cardinal points of the compass with meticulous precision. The builders of the Great Pyramid of Khufu aligned the great monument to the cardinal points with an accuracy of better than 4 minutes of arc, or 1/15 of 1 degree. In fact, all three are remarkably aligned in a way you wouldn't expect to see from an era without drones, blueprints, and computers. All three pyramids exhibit the same manner of error. They are rotated slightly counterclockwise from the cardinal points. Glenn Dash, The Journal of Ancient Egyptian Architecture. Knowing the Egyptians were meticulous engineers, Bauval concluded that the anomalies concerning the size and alignment of Pharaoh Menkaure's pyramid must have been intentional. But what could they signify? As Bauval admired the stars above on that November night, a friend approached and casually observed that the three stars of Orion's belt, Zeta, Epsilon, and Delta, were not perfectly aligned. The third and smallest star is offset to the east. As its name suggests, Orion's belt typically represents Orion's waist in depictions of the hunter. Other aspects of his appearance may vary, but he is often shown holding a weapon in one hand and a shield or animal hidden in the other, based on the positions of the other stars in the constellation. Upon hearing of Delta, the offset star to the east, Bauval experienced a realization as profound as a mystical vision. The Giza pyramids were evidently intended to symbolize these stars, which are known to have held mystical significance for the ancient Egyptians. Egyptian mythology actually suggests that the gods descended from the belt stars of Orion and Sirius, and they believed that from Sirius and Orion came beings in the form of humans. They called them Osiris and Isis, and it was them who actually instigated the human race. Ivan Petrichevich, Ancient Code. According to tradition, the first rulers of Egypt were not men but gods, and the first god to rule over Egypt was Ra. He then divided the kingdom, giving Lower Egypt to his son Osiris and Upper Egypt to his son Seth. But Seth schemed to overthrow Osiris and eventually had Osiris drowned. Isis, the sister and wife of Osiris, retrieved Osiris's mutilated body and resurrected him. Thereafter, he went through the secret gates and joined Ra in his celestial path. His place on the throne of Egypt was taken over by his son Horus, who was sometimes depicted as a winged and horned deity. Zechariah Sitchin, The 12th Planet. The Egyptians believed that Osiris returned to the Orion constellation, where he waited to welcome the souls of pharaohs. Pharaohs themselves were considered incarnations of the god. Adoration of Osiris, Lord of Restore and the great company of gods in the underworld, by the Osiris scribe Ani. He says, "Homage to you at the head of the west, when Nefer in Abydos. My heart comes before you in truth, without deceit in my body. I do not knowingly speak falsehoods. I will not act thus a second time. May you give me bread, and grant that I may come forth in the presence of the altar of the Lords of Truth, and that I may go and return in the underworld without dispute against my soul, to see the disk of the sun, and look at the moon god, forever and ever." The Papyrus of Ani, chapter 18. Returning to Bauval, he believed the three pyramids must have been built precisely in that location, on the banks of the Nile, to imitate their proximity to the Milky Way, which appears as a shimmering river in the night sky. By advocating such a hypothesis, Bauval was invoking the almost heretical notion that each of the pyramids at Giza was constructed as component parts of a predefined long-term project, a multi-generational master plan that involved the belt stars of the constellation of Orion. Bauval first proposed the basic idea in an article in 1989. The hypothesis suggested that the ancient Egyptians were sophisticated astronomers who intentionally aligned the pyramids with the stars, and that the chambers and shafts of the pyramids were used to carry out the ceremonies described in the pyramid texts that would allow the deceased pharaoh to become Osiris and travel to the Amduat, the afterlife in the night sky. Bauval expanded and popularized the theory with his 1994 book, The Orion Mystery, co-authored with Adrian Gilbert. Bauval was soon comparing other sites in the region and discovered that the pyramid at Zawiat al-Arian corresponds to the star on Orion's right shoulder, while the pyramid of Nebka at Abu Rawash corresponds to the figure's foot. Unfortunately, Bauval did not find traces of the two remaining pyramids needed to complete the model. However, Michael Arbuthnot believes he may be close to finding them, or at least their remains. He states that the idea of a chance celestial-terrestrial correlation between Zawiat al-Arian, Abu Rawash, and the Giza pyramids is statistically near impossible. It makes much sense to conclude there was a specific intention in mind, that being a terrestrial representation of the Orion constellation. Additionally, there is evidence that strongly indicates the connection extends to the Mesa and Bellatrix, the Gesh sites. Both of these locations exhibit the remains of ancient structures, which have either been dismantled, eroded, or buried. Again, the chances of such remains being coincidentally located in these remote but precise locations are inconceivable. The evidence begs for continued research. As these sites are in the midst of modern civilization, finding solid evidence of ancient structures has proven to be somewhat difficult. However, the presence of the signature limestone is encouraging. A concentrated, thorough, and well-financed expedition would surely turn positive results. Michael Arbuthnot, Team Atlantis Productions. Using a computerized sky map to simulate the night sky as it appeared in ancient times, Bauval pinpointed when this mirroring of Earth and sky last occurred, with the stars arranged identically to their position relative to the meridian. He arrived at the date 10,500 BC, a date that corresponds to the end of the last ice age and the beginning of the precessional cycle. This, he concluded, could also be the time referred to in ancient texts as Zep Tepi, or the first time. In their most profound and beautiful religious texts, the ancient Egyptians spoke of the time of the gods, Zep Tepi, or the first time, with the unshakable conviction that there had indeed been such an epoch. In other words, they believed that Zep Tepi had been an actual historical event. In line with their prevailing dualism, they also thought that it had been projected and recorded in the catalogue of the starry sky, and it was a story that was reenacted endlessly in the cosmic setting by the cyclical displays of the celestial orbs and the constellations. What they had in mind was a kind of cosmic passion play, in which each main character was identified with a specific celestial body. Zep Tepi was regarded as a mysterious and golden age that had immediately followed creation. Richard Hoagland, The Monuments of Mars, City on the Edge of Forever. Rather than being merely a myth, perhaps this golden age commemorates the date when Egypt was founded. And if so, by whom? We know that there were many gods in ancient civilizations like Egyptian and Greek. They had their unique shapes, abilities, and skills. Everyone believed in them. Is it possible that they had indeed seen those gods? If so, who were they? Could it be that we were not true gods in the real sense of the word, but were real flesh and blood beings similar to us? The discussion surrounding Egypt's Golden Age certainly raises the possibility that Egypt itself and other advanced cultures of the ancient world, such as those of the Sumerians and the Mayans, may have been established by survivors of an earlier, technologically superior civilization that existed before the last ice age, perhaps the Atlanteans. Much has been written about Atlantis, but it is Ignatius Donnelly in particular who is the best-known proponent of its existence. Donnelly's major supposition was that similarities found in various corners of the world have to be explained by a common historical origin. Donnelly calls Atlantis the place of origin of modern humanity. He correctly deduces that the destruction of Atlantis happened in stages, talking about the number of great catastrophes that have shaken the world. Peter R. Farley, Where Were You Before the Tree of Life? During research for his book Heaven's Mirror and the television series Quest for the Lost Civilization, English author and researcher Graham Hancock compared the measurements and designs of various sites around the world and made astonishing discoveries. If an advanced civilization existed, I guess the sages would point toward heaven if they're trying to leave an indelible message for mankind that they knew could survive any deluge down here, upon Mother Earth. They would leave it in the precise languages of mathematics and astronomy. They would also build a heaven's mirror on Earth so that we don't dismiss their message, or maybe warning, as mere coincidence. Sarasvati, Indian philosopher. The seemingly different cultures of Egypt, Cambodia, and Mexico shared a common belief in the immortality of the soul. All three used pyramids in their sacred architecture and demonstrated advanced astronomical knowledge. Most importantly, all aspired to the heavens, which they considered the soul's home, and aligned their monuments with specific stars to which they believed their souls would return after death. The idea that this early civilization was founded on a religion that saw the soul as something separate from the body, something capable of surviving bodily death and able, through various means, to ascend to the stars, particularly chimes with me. Such beliefs may well be the foundations of many more modern religions, where heaven is envisaged for those faithful to the myths and legends surrounding their particular sect, and who may travel there after their body has died. Stuart Aiken, The Methuselah Strain. The southern shaft in the Queen's Chamber of the Great Pyramid of Giza points to Sirius, the star the Egyptians identified with the goddess Isis, while the southern shaft in the King's Chamber points to Zeta Orionis, the brightest star in Orion's belt, representing Isis's husband Osiris. My experience has taught me that collections of coincidences do not occur easily. Coincidence is a word we all use when we cannot explain why there is a convergence of certain events and facts. What is coincidence to some is not so to those who understand the links between the events and the facts. The facts before us were not remote or detached from one another. They were clear. Robert Bauval, The Orion Mystery. Today it is thought that the Great Pyramid was not built to house the pharaoh's body, but to initiate novice priests into the mysteries of existence. Through the mystic passageways and chambers of the Great Pyramid, past the illumined of antiquity, they entered its portals as men, they came forth as gods. It was the place of the second birth, the womb of the mysteries, and wisdom dwelt in it as God dwells in the hearts of men. Somewhere in the depths of its recesses, there resided an unknown being who was called the Initiator, or the Illustrious One, robed in blue and gold and bearing in his hand the sevenfold key of eternity. This was the lion-faced Hierophant, the Holy One, the Master of Masters, who never left the house of wisdom and whom no man ever saw, save he who had passed through the gates of preparation and purification. It was in these chambers that Plato, he of the broad brow, came face to face with the wisdom of the ages personified in the Master of the Hidden House. Manly P. Hall, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Hancock was initially inspired by the work of Professor Eleanor Manica, who discovered that the ancient builders of the temple complex at Angkor in Cambodia used a standardized unit of measurement the cubit in their constructions, whose scale corresponds to the cycles of time integral to Hindu beliefs. Over a 20-year period, Maneka found numbers that were symbolic or actual long counts of the solar and lunar years. Her rule-based system that revealed numbers may well be a later function of the eventual monument, made to correspond with the numbers found in Hindu epic stories, since these are lavishly illustrated within extensive bas-reliefs depicting major Hindu myths. For example, the main causeway is 1,728 cubits long, corresponding to the first period of 1,728,000 years in Hindu cosmology. The other principal avenues mark the durations of subsequent ages. In her view, Angkor Wat is a megalithic monument to the sky gods, illustrated using the famous tableau of Vedic and later Indian myths. Richard Heath, Harmonic Origins of the World. Precessional numbers play a key role in the alignments and dimensions of the temples at Angkor Wat. There are 72 temples, and the Angkor Wat causeway is offset by 3/4 of a degree to the east. In precessional terms, this corresponds to 54 years, a number found throughout both sites. 54 is considered an important precessional number, being half of 108. It belongs to a sequence of precessional numbers: 54, 72, 108, 144, 180, 216, and so on. Santa and I made our first research trip to Angkor in 1997, when Cambodia was still in turmoil. The awe-inspiring temples were eerily deserted. Stillness and silence reigned everywhere. It was an experience that we will never forget. Graham Hancock, Heaven's Mirror. Hancock asserts that the offset causeway warned priests 3 days in advance of the spring equinox, the day when the sun aligns with the central tower with a spectacular effect. Interestingly, the Khmer civilization is also infused with serpent mythology. A female Nagini, daughter of the king of the Nagas, is one of the legendary progenitors of the Khmer race. We will cover this in depth in a future upload. Nearby, the temple complex of Angkor Thom features 54 towers connected by a bridge adorned with images of 54 mystical personalities representing the forces of light and darkness. Their eternal struggle is considered a symbol of the precessional mechanism, which Hindus viewed as a battle between giants for control of the earth. Hancock argues that the mathematical and architectural evidence at these sites indicates a gnosis, or body of knowledge, that will allow humanity to defeat mortality, a paradigm in which the knowledge-giving Serpent of Eden is not a villain but a hero. Kent Davis, Angkor the Magnificent, Wonder City of Ancient Cambodia. In his research, Hancock made another exciting discovery. The ground plan of the Angkor temple complex matches stars in the constellation Draco as it appeared in the night sky of 10,500 BC. Graham writes in his book, Heaven's Mirror, "When we constructed the computer, Sky Globe 3.6, to look north, we were amazed to discover that at the exact moment of sunrise on the spring equinox in 10,500 BC, the constellation of Draco lay due north in the middle of the sky, straddling the meridian well above the horizon in precisely the pattern that is replicated on the ground by the principal temples of Angkor. This date, he believes, is highly significant, as it is considered the year when the lost continent of Atlantis sank beneath the sea following a natural catastrophe. He argues that it is reasonable to speculate that survivors may have migrated to emerging centers of civilization like Egypt and Cambodia, where they used their superior knowledge to construct monuments that collectively form a grand design. The basic thesis is that the pyramids and other megalithic structures around the world were built earlier than conventional wisdom supposes, probably around 10,450 BC, and here is where the skeptics really get tweaked, because after all, we must know more than any other previous humans. The fact is, there was a technologically advanced civilization around back then, and they planned and constructed these monuments. This is a no-brainer. Contemporaries still can't duplicate some of those engineering feats. This seems even more likely when considering that the leonine figure of the Sphinx aligns with the constellation Leo in that fateful year, and together, all 4 critical constellations corresponded to the 4 cardinal points of the compass at the dawn of the spring equinox in 10,500 BC. Aquarius was setting in the west, Leo was rising in the east, Orion was visible to the south, and Draco lay to the north. Hancock maintains that it is no coincidence that Giza and Angkor are separated by exactly 72 degrees of longitude, and suggests that it is only a matter of time before a fourth sacred site, dedicated to the constellation Aquarius, is discovered equidistant from the others. 72 is an important precessional number. It is highly unlikely that the site of Angkor Wat would be located such an important number of degrees of longitude from the site of the Great Pyramid at Giza simply by accident, especially because both the Great Pyramid and the art and architecture of Angkor Wat deliberately employ precessional numbers and symbology in their construction. David Warner Matheson, The Ancient Worldwide System. Several candidates for this fourth site exist, including Tiahuanaco in Bolivia, whose central axis is thought to have been flooded to reflect the Milky Way. This aquatic symbolism may be significant as water is, of course, the symbol of Aquarius. Another point of interest about the Tiahuanaco monoliths is that their garments from the waist down are patterned in the form of fish scales. Here, too, is a parallel to the Apkallos, the bearded, fish-garbed figures who brought high civilization to Mesopotamia. Nor is it as though bearded figures are missing from the repertoire of Tiahuanaco. Two have survived, and one on the pillar in the semi-subterranean temple has been identified since time immemorial with the great civilizing deity Kon-Tiki Viracocha, who is described in multiple myths and traditions as being white-skinned and bearded. Graham Hancock, Magicians of the Gods. Another candidate lies beneath the shimmering waters off Japan's northern coast. Here, archaeologists are studying the ruins of what appears to be an ancient temple, which, if proven beyond doubt to be man-made, would qualify as one of the oldest known constructions in the world. This monument and others in the area were made by an unknown civilization. If the Yonaguni site had been carved by nature, you would find debris from the erosion to have collected around the site, but no rock fragments have yet been found. I believe that building this monument necessitated a high degree of technology and some sort of machinery. Professor Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyus in Okinawa. This massive stone structure is believed to have sunk beneath the waves due to a natural catastrophe over 10,000 years ago, making it the prime candidate for Hancock's fourth site. All of the evidence so far points to a lost civilization with very advanced technology, which should not have existed at this time. In the famous words of Sherlock Holmes, "When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." Dr. Roy Murphy, Ancient Mysteries enthusiast. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for our next upload.